Summer is over, and that can only mean one thing: football is back. By the end of September, there were only 3 undefeated teams in the NFL. 3 teams had already occupied the number 1 spot in college football. There was a new playoff format at the end of the split season of Major League Baseball, and much more on the August and September 1981 edition of Back in Time Sports. Hope is reborn every August for the fan bases of 28 NFL teams, no matter how bad the previous season ended. And it ended badly for quite a few, with 10 teams racking up double digits in losses, most notably the New Orleans Saints, who lost an NFL record 15 games. 5 years ago, Tampa Bay was winless in their first year in the league, but that was when there were 6 preseason games and only 14 regular season games. The Saints have not had a winning record in their 14-year history, but there is optimism around a new coach and new running back. The coach is Bum Phillips, who led the Oilers to the playoffs the last 3 years, including 2 AFC Championship appearances, and the running back is rookie George Rogers, the top pick in last April's draft. 2 more teams with new head coaches are Denver and Washington. Dan Reeves, who was the Cowboys' offensive coordinator last year, is taking over for the Broncos, and Joe Gibbs, last year's offensive coordinator for San Diego, will lead the Redskins. San Francisco improved from 2 wins to 6 last year and hope to make further improvements under third-year head coach Bill Walsh, who has made Joe Montana the permanent starting quarterback after splitting starts with Steve DeBerg last year. San Francisco's hopes rely mostly on improvements from the defense, especially the secondary, which the 49ers made a priority in the draft. Defensive backs coach George Seifert has 4 rookies to work with, including first-round pick Ronnie Lott. Defensive secondaries across the league got a little help from the NFL Rules Committee, who made the use of adhesive substances illegal. Stickum had been gaining in popularity and usage among receivers in recent years. The broadcast teams for the television networks remained largely the same as last year. NBC will have Bob Costas, Dick Enberg, and Charlie Jones leading the play-by-play, with Merlin Olsen and Len Dawson heading the color commentators. Headliners of the CBS crews include Pat Summerall, Vin Scully, and Dick Stockton calling plays, with John Madden, Roger Staubach, and the newly retired Fred Dreyer providing commentary. The Monday Night Football team of Frank Gifford, Don Meredith, and Howard Cosell also return. The odds makers in Las Vegas don't expect much change this season, giving the participants in last year's AFC and NFC championships the top odds to win this year's Super Bowl. If you're looking for value picks, 2 division winners from last year are 10-1 or better, with Buffalo at 10-1 and Minnesota at 25-1. If you like long shots, Seattle, the New York Giants, Green Bay, and New Orleans are all 150-1 or better. The NFL season kicked off in Tampa Bay with a thrilling Saturday night game against the Vikings. Buccaneer quarterback Doug Williams gave the home crowd something to cheer about early, connecting on a pass to Kevin House, who took it to the house. Minnesota drove the ball past the Buccaneers' 40-yard line 4 times in the first half, but came away with no points. Vikings quarterback Steve Dills was filling in for the injured Tommy Kramer and finished with 62 pass attempts, the second most in NFL history. Pass number 60 was one that Dills would have liked to take back. With the Vikings trailing by 1 and driving late in the fourth quarter, Tampa Bay safety Neil Colsey stepped in front of the pass and returned it 82 yards to seal the win. It was the 4th takeaway by the Buccaneers, whose plunder included 2 fumble recoveries and 2 interceptions. In a battle of wildcard teams from last year, the Los Angeles Rams jumped out to a 17-6 halftime lead over Houston. The margin could have been bigger if not for 2 interceptions that led Houston to field goals. On the opening drive in the second half, the Oilers went for it on a 4th and 5, and the result was a 33-yard touchdown. Houston quarterback Ken Stabler had retired during the offseason, but unretired during the preseason and only had 7 practices to get in shape. The Oilers didn't throw a pass in the fourth quarter, leaning on Earl Campbell and taking advantage of a 95-yard kickoff return to win the game. The Rams replaced starting quarterback Pat Hayden in the fourth quarter, and it was evident they missed Vince Ferragamo, who was making $600,000 in the Canadian Football League this year, over 10 times more than his salary with the Rams last year when he finished 3rd in NFL passer rating. The start of the season for the defending Super Bowl champs was anything but super. The Oakland Raiders only managed 165 yards of offense, losing 9-7 to the Denver Broncos. Fred Steinfurt kicked the winning field goal for the Broncos, but otherwise had a day to forget, going 1 for 6 in field goal attempts and also missed an extra point. Last year, Steinfurt made the most field goals from 50 or more yards in the NFL, which included a 57-yard field goal, tied for the longest of the season. New Broncos coach Dan Reeves got the first win of his career. At 37 years old, Reeves is the youngest coach in the NFL and a year younger than his starting quarterback, Craig Morton. Joe Montana led San Francisco on 2 fourth-quarter rallies from 7-point deficits to tie the score with Detroit, but the Lions did not leave them enough time for a third as Billy Sims scored with 18 seconds left. The Monday night matchup featured the league's 2 top passing offenses from last year, featuring last year's MVP Brian Sipe for the Cleveland Browns and Dan Fouts, who was 5th in the MVP voting for the San Diego Chargers. Both teams came out throwing, but only the Chargers came out scoring, putting up at least 10 points in each quarter on the way to a 44-14 blowout. At one point, Fouts completed 15 passes in a row, 2 shy of the NFL record. Sipe threw a club record 57 times for 357 yards in the losing effort. The biggest upset of the week goes to Kansas City, which stunned Pittsburgh with a fumble recovery for a score with 2 minutes left and an interception with 1 minute and 11 seconds left. Despite having already lost 5 turnovers for the game, the Steelers were ahead at the 2-minute warning with a first down at the Chiefs' 28-yard line. That's when Kansas City brought their linebackers on a blitz, knocked the ball loose from Terry Bradshaw, and ran for the winning score. The Chiefs have improved each year under fourth-year head coach Marv Levy, but are still looking for their first winning record in 8 years. The comeback of the week belonged to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Seattle Seahawks jumped out to a 21-0 lead at the end of the first quarter thanks to a couple of turnovers and an inefficient Bengals passing attack. But Cincinnati kept chipping away, leaning on the running game and good field position, and finally took the lead with 5 minutes left in the game, holding on to win 27-21. Maybe it was the stripes? This was the regular season debut of the Bengals' new uniforms, which have drawn mixed reviews. But after week 1, none of the fans in Cincinnati were complaining. The Bengals were back in action in week 2, taking on the Jets in Shea Stadium. It was an exciting finish with 21 points scored in the last 3.5 minutes of the game. Cincinnati took an 8-point lead with 3 minutes left on a fumble recovery return for a touchdown. The Jets managed to get in the end zone with a minute left in the game, but the onside kick failed. 12 years ago, these teams were both in the AFL, whose rules would have allowed the Jets to attempt a 2-point conversion to try and force overtime, but as part of the merger with the NFL, the 2-point conversion was dropped. Detroit traveled to Jack Murphy Stadium and gave San Diego all they could handle. The Lions took a 2-point lead late in the fourth quarter on a drive that included a fake punt on 4th and 8, but could not stop the Chargers from answering with a touchdown. With less than a minute left, the Lions swiftly moved to San Diego's 7-yard line, but an interception at the goal line with 1 second left ended the game. Chargers quarterback Dan Fouts became the 29th player in NFL history with 20,000 passing yards. It was Fouts' 20th game with 300 or more passing yards during his career, which is 4th on the all-time list. Seattle accomplished something they didn't manage all of last year. They won a game at home. The 13-10 win over the Broncos wasn't the most inspiring victory, but it broke the 10-game home losing streak and may as well have been a Super Bowl win, judging by the celebration of the fans in attendance at the Kingdome. Pittsburgh did something they haven't done in over 10 years. They opened a season with 2 consecutive losses. A sellout crowd at the Orange Bowl watched Miami rout the Steelers 30-10. It was the 7th matchup between Don Shula and Chuck Noll, who are both in the top 5 in wins among current NFL head coaches. Shula now has the 4-3 edge on Noll, but Noll can take some comfort in having the edge in Super Bowl wins 4-2. Washington quarterback Joe Theismann threw for a career-high 318 yards, but only managed to put up 7 points in a 10-point loss to New York, as the Giants' defense and special teams were the surprising stars of the game. Last year, the Giants gave up the 2nd most points in the NFL, but new defensive coordinator Bill Parcells has switched from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4 defense, and linebackers coach Bill Belichick has first-round pick Lawrence Taylor to work with this year. After a 1-15 season last year, any game the Saints win is likely to be the upset of the week, and that was the case in Week 2. Rookie running back George Rogers had a breakout game, running for 162 yards and a touchdown, despite sitting out much of the second half with minor injuries. Even when Rodgers fumbled, the Saints still caught the breaks, equaling their win total from last year by beating the Rams 23-17. There wasn't much competition for comeback of the week, which belonged to the Atlanta Falcons. Going into the fourth quarter at Lambeau Field, the Falcons were down 17-0, and then they scored 31 unanswered points to win comfortably. It was also a versatile display of scoring, getting their points from a field goal, a rushing touchdown, a passing touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown, and a fumble return for a touchdown. Week 3 was off and running, with Tony Dorsett off and running. Dorsett ran for 162 yards, including a 75-yard touchdown. The Cowboys trailed New England briefly in the third quarter before scoring the final 18 points of the game and winning 35-21. It was the 4th meeting all time between the teams, and the Cowboys have won all 4. Dorsett is off to the best start of his career, averaging 141 yards over the first 3 games. It wasn't a surprise that Dorsett led the NFL in rushing for Week 3, but the same can't be said for the leading receiver. Steve Watson of the Denver Broncos caught 7 passes for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns during a 28-10 victory over Baltimore. Coming into the game, Watson had played 34 games with the Broncos and only managed 15 catches with no touchdowns. Atlanta improved to 3-0 for the first time in their 16-year history with a 34-17 victory over San Francisco. The Falcons pulled away thanks to a 101-yard interception return by Tom Pridemore, who picked off a Joe Montana pass a yard deep in the end zone. It was a team record, but not even a personal best. In college at West Virginia, he returned an interception against Penn State 102 yards for a touchdown, which is the NCAA record. Even though Pridemore plays defense, he's also a passer. But he doesn't pass balls, he passes bills, as a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates. The top 2 picks in this year's draft lined up against each other as the Giants and Saints faced off, and although both flashed their potential, neither had a game to remember. Top pick George Rogers had 75 yards rushing for New Orleans, but averaged less than 4 yards per carry. The second overall pick, Lawrence Taylor, had to leave the game in the fourth quarter with a pinched nerve in his neck. The Giants ended up winning the game 20-7 with 324 yards passing from Phil Simms. The upset of the week belonged to Miami taking on Houston in the Astrodome. The Dolphins' defense controlled the game, sacking Ken Stabler 8 times and holding Earl Campbell to 78 yards rushing, which was enough to pull out a 6-point victory. Minnesota made the comeback of the week, topping division rival Detroit by 2 points. The Vikings prevented the Lions from getting a first down for the final 10 minutes of the game and had the ball at their own 20 with less than 2 minutes to play. Viking quarterback Tommy Kramer led the team to the Lions' 2-yard line, and with 7 seconds left, kicker Rick Danmeyer converted the field goal. The Lions almost turned the tables with an incredible comeback of their own with a few seconds left, completing a long pass to the Vikings' 15-yard line, but there was no time left on the clock to attempt a winning field goal. The NFL is big on television, and this week on a big television. Seattle debuted what is called the largest color television in North America in Week 4 against Kansas City. The Seahawks unveiled a $3.2 million video screen in the Kingdome called Diamond Vision that is 24 feet by 36 feet. Unfortunately, there weren't enough Seahawks highlights being shown as the Chiefs won the game 20-14. A battle at the top of the AFC West took place in Denver's Mile High Stadium with the undefeated Chargers in town. The Chargers' offense came in averaging 38 points per game, but it was the Broncos that put on the offensive display, getting out to a 35-0 lead with 4 touchdown passes thrown by Craig Morton. Steve Watson proved that his Week 3 breakout wasn't a fluke, catching 8 passes for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. San Diego rallied late, but the deficit was too much to overcome in the 42-24 Broncos win. The 49ers beat the Saints 21-14 at Candlestick Park, but it could be argued that the Saints beat themselves. New Orleans moved the ball inside the 49ers' 30-yard line 6 times without scoring any points. The 49ers made a concentrated effort to improve their secondary in the draft, and it paid off. First-round pick Ronnie Lott and second-round pick Eric Wright both made their first interceptions in the NFL. Lott's interception was returned 26 yards for a touchdown in the fourth quarter to seal the victory. If you saw Saints coach Bum Phillips wearing a Saints cap in the second half instead of his usual cowboy hat, it's because it was snatched by a spectator. Phillips was clearly unhappy, but declined to press charges. There were 2 overtime games in Week 4. The first was a thrilling finish in Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium between the Bills and Bengals. There were 24 points scored in the fourth quarter, with the Bengals scoring touchdowns on 84 and 91-yard drives, the latter of which put them up 3 with less than 2 minutes in regulation. But that was enough time for the Bills to set up and convert a 40-yard field goal with 1 second left on the clock. In overtime, the Bengals offense took control, mounting a 70-yard drive and kicking the game-winning field goal. The second overtime game was in Three Rivers Stadium, where the hometown Steelers almost let the game slip against the winless Patriots. New England scored 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, the second of which tied the game at 21 with 24 seconds left. The Patriots converted a key 4th and 5 at the Steeler 20 on the drive, but the Steelers got the wake-up call in overtime, and Bradshaw completed a 24-yard pass to Lynn Swann for the win. Detroit pulled the upset of the week, shutting out the defending Super Bowl champs 16-0. It was the first time the Raiders had been shut out since 1966 when they were still in the AFL. In that game, Tom Flores was the quarterback for Oakland. In this game, he was the head coach. The Raiders' offense gained just 131 yards in the game and only crossed midfield 3 times. Billy Sims ran for 133 yards and a touchdown for the Lions. Tampa Bay had the comeback win of the week, scoring 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to defeat the St. Louis Cardinals. Running back James Owens got his first carry of the year for Tampa Bay in the fourth quarter and made it count, scoring from a yard out. It may have been a short rush, but Owens has the speed for much longer runs. He ran the 110-meter hurdles in the 1976 Summer Olympics in Montreal. Losses by the Chargers and Falcons left only 3 unbeaten teams after Week 4: the Miami Dolphins, Philadelphia Eagles, and Dallas Cowboys. Washington and New England are the only teams still without a win, but in the case of Washington, it seems almost unbelievable. The Redskins have gained the 3rd most yards in offense in the NFL and given up the 3rd fewest yards on defense, but have still lost all 4 games. Digging deeper, though, they have turned the ball over 15 times on fumbles and interceptions and only recovered 4. If they can manage to hold onto the ball, there seems to be plenty of room for improvement in the win column. In other statistical trivia, the Buffalo Bills have outscored their opponents by 54 points, the most in the league, but only have a 2-2 record to show for it. The Browns have been outscored by 22 points and also have a 2-2 record. The college football preseason AP poll was released in August, and Michigan was voted the number 1 team in the country. After losing 2 close games to open the 1980 season, Michigan reeled off 8 straight wins, including games against Ohio State in Columbus and Washington in the Rose Bowl. Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, and USC rounded out the top 5, with each getting a handful of first-place votes. Last year's champion, the Georgia Bulldogs, came in at number 10. Michigan was not only number 1 in the polls, but they're also number 1 at the turnstiles, with an average attendance of over 104,000 last season, 15,000 more than any other team. As a conference, the Big Ten dominated ticket sales with an average of over 64,000 per game. The Southeastern and Big 8 conferences both averaged over 50,000, and the Pac-10 and Southwest conferences averaged over 40,000. Overall, college football attendance has increased 26 out of the last 27 years. The most significant rule change for this year is that offensive holding is now a 10-yard penalty rather than 15, and offensive linemen can extend their arms and hands while blocking. Also, during a point after touchdown or field goal, a player cannot stand, step, or jump on another player or be picked up by a teammate in an effort to block the kick. Villanova will not be fielding a team this year. The Board of Trustees made the decision to end the football program after 87 years. Last year's team went 6-5, with defensive lineman Howie Long being taken in the 2nd round of the April NFL Draft. The games kicked off with anticipated matchups between Georgia and Tennessee, Florida taking on Miami, and Alabama facing LSU in a primetime matchup. The defending champions had no problems with the Volunteers, winning 44-0 and outgaining the Volunteers by over 400 yards of total offense. It was Tennessee's worst loss in 58 years. Georgia added 20,000 new seats over the summer, and they were all needed with a record home crowd of 79,000 fans in attendance. Herschel Walker picked up where he left off last year, running for 161 yards and a touchdown, and the Bulldogs extended the longest winning streak in the nation to 14 games. For the first time in the 40-year-old rivalry, Florida and Miami faced each other in September. Florida took a 14-3 halftime lead thanks to 5 first-half turnovers by the Hurricanes. Things seemingly got worse for Miami when quarterback Jim Kelly left with an injury in the 3rd quarter. But in the 4th quarter, backup Mark Richt threw a 55-yard touchdown pass to pull within 2 points and drove the team to the edge of field goal range. A 55-yard field goal kick that bounced off the left upright and over the crossbar gave Miami a thrilling 21-20 victory. ABC has only broadcast 5 primetime games since 1972. In fact, many stadiums don't even have lights. In the ACC, only Wake Forest and NC State have them. For the sake of ratings, ABC was probably hoping for a close battle between Alabama and LSU, but it was anything but that. The Tide rolled to a 31-7 win, with the Tigers' lone scorer coming with 13 seconds left in the game. It doesn't get any easier for LSU. Next week they take on Notre Dame. In other top 20 games, number 8 Pitt, number 14 Mississippi State, and number 19 Florida State each cruised to victory. The helmet sticker for Week 1 goes to quarterback Jim McMahon of BYU, who racked up 403 yards passing, leading number 16 BYU to their 13th consecutive victory. McMahon has passed for at least 300 yards in each of those games. The first full Saturday of college football did not have any matchups between ranked teams, but there was plenty of chaos in the top 10. Number 1 Michigan opened its season by traveling to Camp Randall Stadium. Wisconsin hadn't scored a point on Michigan in 5 years, being outscored 176-0 in the last 4 games, and hadn't beaten the Wolverines in 15 years. That was about to change as Wisconsin scored a pair of second-quarter touchdowns to take a 14-7 lead at the half. After an 89-yard touchdown run by Michigan's Butch Woolfolk, the Badgers responded with a 71-yard touchdown pass and held on for the shocking 21-14 upset. Number 2 Alabama didn't fare any better. Going into the home game against Georgia Tech as 24-point favorites, the Tide seemed to be in control, but turnovers killed 3 promising drives, and 2 more inside Tech's 25-yard line were limited to field goals. Alabama also assisted on a Georgia Tech touchdown with roughing the punter and pass interference penalties. In the fourth quarter, the Yellow Jackets' defense tightened up, and the offense drove 80 yards for the winning touchdown. Alabama had one last chance to tie the game on a 50-yard field goal with 7 seconds left, but the kick was not good. It's a loss that has to sting. Last year, Nebraska embarrassed Iowa 57-0. After this year's game, it's clear the Hawkeyes' defense is vastly improved. Both teams put on a defensive showcase, and in the end, the Hawkeyes got their revenge, knocking off the number 7 Cornhuskers 10-7. Iowa kicker Reggie Roby helped to win the field position battle, averaging over 55 yards per punt. Tennessee gave up over 40 points for the second straight week, getting hammered by number 5 USC 43-7. Marcus Allen ran for 210 yards and 4 touchdowns while sitting out most of the second half. The Volunteers lost to both Georgia and Southern Cal to open last year as well, but those games were both within a field goal. All other top 20 teams in action won their games, with the exception of number 19 Stanford, which lost to Purdue 27-19, despite 418 passing yards by Cardinal quarterback John Elway. In the lead-up to their opening matchup, North Carolina coach Dick Crum claimed that East Carolina assistant coaches were using the law to get an unfair advantage. Crum said the coaches were watching the practice field from the window of the law library as the Tar Heels were preparing for their matchup. He had stationed an injured North Carolina player in the library to watch for unusual activity. If the Pirates did observe the practice, their spyglass needs cleaning because the Tar Heels won the game 56-0. The nation's longest losing streak almost ended when Northwestern went for a 2-point conversion, only down a point late in the fourth quarter against Indiana. But the conversion failed, and it was the Wildcats' 21st consecutive loss. But on a brighter note, the helmet sticker of the week goes to the entire Oregon State Beavers team for snapping a 14-game losing streak, overcoming a 28-0 deficit to beat Fresno State 31-28. The featured college football matchup of Week 3 was preseason number 1 Michigan hosting current number 1 Notre Dame. Last year, Notre Dame beat Michigan by 2 points on a last-second field goal. This year, Michigan was out for redemption, hosting the Irish at Michigan Stadium. The Wolverines only completed 4 passes on the day, but 2 of them were touchdowns to Anthony Carter, and the Wolverines' defense held Notre Dame to less than 2 yards a carry on the way to a dominating 25-7 win. Number 20 Wisconsin was attempting to open the season with consecutive wins over top 10 teams, taking on number 9 UCLA. The teams appear to be evenly matched, but the Bruins won the turnover battle 4-1 and the game 31-13. Number 17 Nebraska easily defeated number 19 Florida State, outrushing the Seminoles 464-54. The 234 yards rushing by Roger Craig were the third most in Nebraska history, and sophomore Irving Fryer had a punt return for a touchdown. It was the 113th consecutive sellout at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. Clemson's defense made a strong statement, intercepting 5 passes, recovering 4 fumbles, and forcing 4 punts to upset the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs 13-3. It was tough running for Herschel Walker, who needed 28 carries to gain 111 yards. With the losses by Florida State and Wisconsin, it's likely the 3-0 Tigers will move into the rankings next week. With Georgia's loss, number 13 BYU now owns the longest winning streak at 15. Other highlights from the week included Marcus Allen rushing for over 200 yards, 4 sacks by Texas defensive end Kenneth Sims, 5 touchdown passes from Dan Marino, and in a battle of the Elways, San Jose State coach Jack Elway led his team to a 28-6 win over Stanford, whose quarterback is his son John Elway. The helmet sticker for Week 3 goes to Morton Anderson of Michigan State, who kicked a Big Ten record 63-yard field goal. Anderson came to the U.S. from Denmark as an exchange student for his senior year of high school and immediately transitioned from kicking soccer balls to footballs. For the first time in 10 years, number 1 and number 2 faced off in the regular season, and the game between USC and Oklahoma absolutely lived up to its billing. The spotlight was on Trojan running back Marcus Allen, who provided plenty of highlights, including a 28-yard touchdown run in the first quarter. But Oklahoma's wishbone offense was on display as well, moving the ball consistently, except when they fumbled, which was often. OU fumbled 10 times, losing 5 of them. The Sooners were still able to hold a 10-point lead midway through the fourth quarter. That's when the Trojans converted 2 fourth downs on the way to a 3-yard touchdown run by Marcus Allen. USC then forced the Sooners to punt for the first time in the game and systematically drove to Oklahoma's 7-yard line with 17 seconds left. Down by 3 points, USC junior tight end Fred Cornwell became the unlikely hero, catching the winning touchdown pass, which was only the second reception of his college career. After the game, USC coach John Robinson said the Trojans would have gone for the touchdown on fourth down rather than attempt a game-tying field goal. Marcus Allen appears to be the early leader in the Heisman Trophy race after another 200-yard game in front of a national television audience. Number 3 Penn State traveled to Lincoln, Nebraska and won a back-and-forth battle with the number 15 Cornhuskers 30-24. There were a combined 108 rushing attempts for almost 600 yards and only 13 pass completions. Kurt Warner had 238 yards rushing for the Nittany Lions. In the only other matchup between ranked teams, number 4 Texas used a 99-yard scoring drive to edge number 14 Miami 14-7. Iowa got its second top 10 win of the season, beating number 6 UCLA, and used the same formula: ball control and an aggressive, swarming defense, including an interception by safety Bob Stoops and a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Purdue got its second top 20 win of the season, beating number 13 Notre Dame 15-14 on a 2-point conversion with 19 seconds to go. Number 9 North Carolina rolled over Boston College 56-14. The Tar Heels have now outscored their first 3 opponents by a score of 165-21. And number 20 SMU got 2 rushing touchdowns from Eric Dickerson to beat TCU 20-9. It was SMU's 10th straight victory in the rivalry. For the second week in a row, the helmet sticker goes to a kicker. Chuck Nelson of Washington, who tied an NCAA record with a field goal in 14 consecutive games and also helped the number 16 Huskies avenge their only loss in the Pac-10 last year with a 17-3 victory over the Oregon Ducks. After the first month of the season, USC is firmly on top of the AP poll, and Marcus Allen is leading all running backs by a wide margin with over 230 yards rushing per game. Another running back that is making waves is North Carolina's Kelvin Bryant, who has an incredible 15 touchdowns through his first 3 games. With the Major League Baseball strike ended, the second half of the season got underway with the All Star Game on August 9th at Cleveland Stadium. The strike didn't appear to drive fans away, as an All Star Game record of over 72,000 were in attendance. After Vice President George Bush threw out the first pitch, the game got underway with Fernando Valenzuela only the second rookie pitcher to start an All Star Game. Valenzuela pitched 1 scoreless inning and struck out 2, but after the 6th inning, the American League was up 4-2. There were 5 home runs in the game, and Mike Schmidt's 2-run shot in the 8th was enough to put the NL ahead for good. The National League has now won 10 straight and 23 out of the last 25. In Philadelphia's first regular season game after the All-Star Game, Pete Rose singled in the 8th inning to pass Stan Musial for the most hits in the National League. Over 60,000 fans witnessed the event, including Musial himself, who went onto the field to congratulate Rose. In September, Nolan Ryan threw his 5th career no-hitter in a nationally televised game against the Dodgers. The 34-year-old Ryan broke a tie with Sandy Koufax for the most in Major League history. The next day, Astros pitcher Don Sutton took a no-hitter into the 7th inning, but back-to-back no-hitters were not to be, and Sutton finished with a 2-hitter. The Dodgers were held hitless for 16 1/3 consecutive innings in the series. After 20 years of playing in Metropolitan Stadium, the Minnesota Twins played their final game in the stadium and will be moving to the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome next year. The Metrodome is the 5th dome stadium built in the United States for professional sports, after the Houston Astrodome, Pontiac Silverdome, New Orleans Superdome, and Seattle Kingdome. Hopefully the dome will increase attendance for the Twins, as they were last in attendance this year with only 7,690 per game. The Dodgers led the major leagues for the 16th time in the last 23 seasons, and this year their average attendance per game was over 42,500, by far the most in the majors, fueled by Fernando Mania. Because of the strike, a split season was played, with both the first half division winners and the second half winners making the playoffs. In the final standings, all 4 divisions had different winners in each half. The Yankees and Brewers in the AL East, and the Athletics and Royals in the AL West, the Phillies and Expos in the NL East, and the Dodgers and Astros in the NL West. The Cardinals and Reds suffered from the split season, with both having the best records in their divisions for the full year, but not winning either half. The Reds had the most to complain about, having the best record in all of Major League Baseball over the full year, and still not qualifying for the playoffs. In boxing news, Sugar Ray Leonard fought Thomas the Hitman Hearns in a 15-round match at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. Leonard entered the fight as the WBC welterweight champion, with his only loss to Roberto Duran, who he beat in a rematch. Hearns entered as the WBA welterweight champion, with a perfect 32-0 record with 30 knockouts. The fight started in Hearns' favor, and after the 12th round, Leonard had a badly swollen left eye, was behind on all three judges' scorecards, and needed a knockout to win. He came out strong and put a tiring Hearns through the ropes, but the count was ended by the bell. Leonard resumed his attack in the 14th, and after pinning Hearns to the ropes and delivering a combination, the referee stopped the fight to give Leonard the unified championship. The fighters made a combined $17 million, which is the largest purse in sports history. John McEnroe won his third straight U.S. Open title, defeating Bjorn Borg in a rematch of last year's tournament. It was also a rematch of the Wimbledon final in June, which McEnroe won as well. McEnroe is now 7-7 in ATP Tour matches against Borg. In the U.S. Open women's singles, Tracy Austin defeated Martina Navratilova to win her second title. It was also the first time in 7 years that Chris Evert did not make the U.S. Open finals. Swimmer Mary T. Maher set several world records at the U.S. National Championships in the 100 and 200 meter butterfly. Her time of 57.93 in the 100 improved the previous record by over a second. She's no stranger to world records, though. She set her first one 2 years ago before entering high school, and already held both of the butterfly records before lowering them. There was a thrilling finish at the Talladega 500, with NASCAR rookie Ron Bouchard winning the race by 2 feet over Darrell Waltrip, with Terry Labonte just behind in third. Coming around to the finish line, Labonte tried to pass Waltrip on the outside, who forced him high, leaving room for Bouchard to slip by on the inside and pass both cars. That's all for August and September 1981. Looking ahead to the next episode, we'll continue to highlight the NFL and college football seasons, the World Series, and much more on the October 1981 edition of Back in Time Sports.